Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Nicastro, creator of Future of Field Service, and I'm thrilled to be here today to announce this year's 2025 Standout 50 Leadership Award recipients. This marks the second year for Standout, which was created with a couple of goals in mind. First, we have a deep respect for the role service leaders play and all that they juggle. We love the idea of giving them some much-deserved and often hard-to-come-by recognition. In addition, we hope that by recognizing these service leaders, Standout will also play a role in bringing greater attention to the incredible importance of the service function plays across their businesses. We have an exciting hour planned. We will, of course, unveil this year's Standout 50, and I'll introduce you to two of my fellow judges for the awards who brought a unique perspective to share with you. But first, I'm so excited to share with you an exclusive keynote interview I recorded for today with a very special guest. I'm thrilled to welcome a very special guest today, Jake Humphrey. Jake is a presenter, entrepreneur, and investor. You likely recognize Jake from his role as the founder and co-host of the High Performance podcast, which has featured world-class athletes, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, and is listened to by millions worldwide. Jake has also covered major global sporting events, including the Olympics, and was the face of BT Sports Premier League for a decade. In addition, he's the founder of Whisper, one of Europe's fastest growing production companies. Last but certainly not least, as Jake shares on LinkedIn, he's also the dad of two amazing kids and husband to Harriet. He says, primarily, I'm a person who loves to explore, to help people find their purpose in a world of so much negativity, to try and be a beacon of positive encouragement. You certainly do that, Jake. Thanks so much for being here with us today to talk about the high performance traits of standout leaders. Jake, I had the opportunity to hear you speak this past January at IFS Sales Kickoff, and one of the people you spoke about was a phenomenal woman, Dame Stephanie or Steve Shirley, who recently passed away after an incredible 91 years of life. As soon as you spoke of her, I will be honest, I wasn't familiar with her, but as soon as I heard you speak of her, I ordered her memoir, Let It Go. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Dame Stephanie, she was a child refugee of the Holocaust who went on to become an IT entrepreneur. She founded what began as an all-woman software company in 1962, pioneered remote work, all while balancing being a mom to her son who had autism. Just an incredible, incredible human being. And I find her story truly inspiring in the context of standout leaders. Would you share, with our audience, what was most impactful to you about Dame Stephanie's story and the time you were able to spend with her?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. A lovely question and a lovely place to start this conversation, actually. I think for me, it was the conviction that she still showed. We spoke to her when she was approaching her 90th birthday. We spoke for a good hour and a half. And, when you sort of see that steely glint in someone's eyes, that they really believe the things that they're saying and they want to sort of leave a legacy, leave a message for others. I think she was in that sort of a space. And one thing that I've always been interested when I have conversations on high performance and meet people in real life is like, what stage of your life are you at? So I worked for a long time hosting Formula One here in the UK for the BBC. And I worked with an amazing guy called Eddie Jordan. And at the time when he was running a Formula One team, I think by all accounts, he was pretty bombastic. He took no prisoners. He was probably quite hard work. He had very high standards. Yet I encountered him in a period in his life where he'd retired from the sport. He was sailing around the world with his wife and he was working as a pundit. And that brought him a kind of freedom. And I was really lucky to spend that time with him. And I got the same impression actually when talking to Steve, is like, she wears the scars of battle, right? But the battles were over. She'd won them. She very much broke down doors that you, Sarah, are able to walk through, that my daughter Florence will one day be able to walk through, that my wife Harriet is able to walk through. And I think that's really something that she got great comfort from. Like she'd reached the point where she was able to look back, see what she'd done and think, you know what, I took a lot of gambles in my life, and most of them paid off. And I think the biggest gamble of all really was backing herself. And the big lesson I would love, if people haven't listened to the conversation with Steve or Stephanie, if they did listen to it, and even if they didn't, and they just heard you and me conversing about her, I think the biggest thing I'd like them to take away is her relationship with risk. She had this lovely quote, I'm sure you remember, where she said, "Risk is not as risky as it first seems." Risk is a necessary ingredient if you want to live a fulfilling life. And I think it's a really powerful statement of hers. And yeah, I was really sad to see the news that she'd passed away. But listen, if we can leave a legacy like Dame Stephanie, I don't think anyone who's done what she's done ever passes away, right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, what you just said about that conviction, and, that kind of working through what you have and getting to a point where you can sort of reflect, it makes me wonder how much of that comes from, staying true to yourself, and taking those risks, but also really believing in yourself and following your intuition. But absolutely an incredible story.
Mhm.
Now, Dame Stephanie is one of many, many incredible leaders you've had the opportunity to interview. Would you mind sharing a couple of other stories or anecdotes from those conversations that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably start with what you just mentioned there, Sarah, which was that, Dame Stephanie was very much herself. She operated in the 1960s when it was very hard to be yourself because nobody wanted to employ women. Women were not able to do the things they're able to do today. And I suppose really the fact that she called herself Steve tells you the kind of world that she lived in. For those that were confused by that, it's because calling herself Steve was the only way to get emails sent back. But there's a lovely phrase that I saw a while back, and it was, "Be yourself so people looking for you can find you." And I think what's lovely about that is everywhere I look in business and in communication and in media, and particularly, sadly, online these days, I really asked myself, are you really being yourself? Is this post from someone being real? Whether it's written by AI or written by your ego, is it really you? Is it really what you're searching for? And I think the biggest standout trait that I would say with the people that I've spoken to on high performance is that they have reached where they've reached being themselves. And the reason why that matters is because let's imagine that your passion is proving other people wrong or beating your neighbor or trying to win some ethereal race that doesn't even exist in the first place. What is this race? There's no finish line, right, to this race that we all think we're running. And the problem is if you spend your life in that kind of ego-driven, competitive mindset, you get to the end, and I promise you realize, oh, there was no race. That it was just all about fulfilling my own dreams, my own ambitions, being true to myself as often as possible. So I think that's the first thing that is very important. And I think the other thing that's kind of tied to that is, like when you go to a party and you don't know many people there and you don't really feel like you can be yourself, maybe because you're with people who are, I don't know, a different social status, or that maybe you're spending time with some senior leaders in your workplace, so you better be kind of on your best behavior. Like, I don't know about you, Sarah, but that's exhausting, right? There's only so long you can keep up that front for. So I think that true high performers are people who have been themselves, because that's the only way you actually can find out really what you can achieve in life. Because if you spend all of your time racked with sort of fear and doubt and trying to be someone else to impress other people, which is a nonsense waste of your time anyway, you just run out of energy. Like you run out of the passion that's required to really find out what your limits are. And slowly the dream kind of fades and you melt away. So the people that we often speak to on high performance, whether it's a chef like Gordon Ramsay, whether it's an amazing entrepreneur like Dame Stephanie Shirley, whether it's an athlete like Usain Bolt or a Formula One driver like Lewis Hamilton, they they have they have had to be themselves to sustain that performance over a long period of time. And I think the other thing that really is very important, and I love to talk about this, and I think I mentioned it actually when I did your kickoff event, is the importance of optimism. We all have a choice, right, in life, whether to walk into the room and be a thermostat or a thermometer. And the difference, of course, is that a thermometer tells the temperature in the room, a thermostat actively controls the temperature in the room. And what I find with high performers is there are people who've decided that they are going to control the temperature in the room. If the room is negative, they're not just going to be negative and go with the flow. They're going to try and inject some positivity into that room. If people are a bit down, if people are struggling, if life seems hard, high performers are the people that come in and act as the thermostat. They change the temperature in that room. And that's often a difficult and challenging thing for people because it requires a certain level of resilience to keep on going despite the negativity, despite the setbacks, despite the challenges. So really, resilience is the sort of high performance superpower that I guess I've cottoned onto in the last few years. And sometimes it's hard when you talk about resilience because I hear this. My son plays in the local football team, and I often see these parents saying to their 10-year-old kids, you need to be more resilient. And I think to myself, your child has no idea how to be more resilient. It's not like a skill they can just create out of nowhere. The answer actually, Sarah, is to be more optimistic because optimists just think that good things are going to happen. And if you think that good things are around the corner or that bad days are going to be replaced by good days, or that even when you've had a challenging 24 hours, the next 24 hours might be better. The thing that means you go back for more and you climb back in the ring or get back on the horse, whatever analogy you want to use, is optimism. Is the fact that you think, well, maybe tomorrow is going to be good. So chasing optimism, I think, is so important because it builds our resilience, but staying true to ourselves and not engaging in a fight or a competition that not only doesn't exist, but also you're never going to win because there's always going to be something at the end. I saw a social media post from a fellow podcaster the other day, and they posted, I want to be the person everyone hates competing against. And I thought, what an awful way to view life and to view business and to view success. Like my take is your success is my success. Like if other people are doing great things, be delighted for them because the fact they've done it means you can also do it. It means it's possible, right? So I think a lot of the sort of traditional things that we're taught in the business world, in the business setting, are probably pretty out of date now. And that's why I love having these sorts of conversations because I just like to kind of bring the conversation into the 21st century.
Yeah, I think it's so important. A couple of things that struck me about what you just shared. I think this idea of resilience, it made me also think about how being yourself helps with building resilience, right? Because you mentioned how exhausting it is when you feel that you have to be something you're not, when you're putting on a mask or a front when you go into these interactions, right? It's really hard to maintain resilience when you're pretending in that way. The other thing that struck me about that is, and going back to Dame Stephanie's example, because I just loved her book, when she followed her path, her genuine journey, and she was herself, it opened the doors for her to help so many people. There's so much power in leadership once you really lean into being who you are to give other people the freedom to do that as well. And there's a huge trickle down effect in that I think is just so positive and very much needed, to your point, to kind of update the rule book, if you will, that a lot of folks are playing by.
I think you're totally right actually in what you say, and I hope that you're heavily involved at the very top level of business. I hope you can vouch for the fact that actually I think in many ways leadership is changing, and for a long time leaders felt that they had to be the most important person in the room. And there's a lovely line that I also like, which is when you talk to a manager, you get the feeling they're important. When you talk to a leader, you get the feeling that you're important. And I think that is also something for people to take out of today. Like how much of your time is spent trying to make yourself feel important? How much of your time is spent making other people feel important?
Absolutely. Yeah. It really, that summarizes very well that shift that is underway. It's,
and you do feel it is, do you?
I do. Absolutely. I think it's very clear, and I can almost sense within, 10 minutes of talking to a leader, kind of, are they of the, I always say old school, and I don't mean that as any connotation to age, but just mentality, right? One that I think at the end of the day, Jake, it's fear-based. It's like you said, it's this idea of scarcity. If I'm not the most successful, someone else will be. Not that idea of abundance, that we can all be successful. And if I surround myself with talented, strong teams and I treat them well, we'll all be better for that, right? And we talk a lot about the challenges that a lot of businesses, industries have with, attracting really strong talent today. And I think so much of that comes down to people are not as willing as they once were to, go to work for someone else. They want to feel that they're part of something. They want to feel that they're valued and heard and respected. And the leaders, to your point, that focus more on how everyone around them feels than how they feel, um, have the most success. And I think ultimately those things are not mutually exclusive, right? Leaders that care more about how others feel ultimately, I think, end up feeling better.
Totally right. And I think we struggled with this for a long time because people in business weren't able to put a price or a value on creating this kind of a culture. My other hat, Sarah, is I'm the founder of a production business called the Whisper Group. It's one of the biggest production companies in Europe. And for a long time, when we were prioritizing, yoga after work on a Monday evening, or leaving work early and everyone going out together for a bit of a drink and a bit of fun in a beer garden somewhere on a Friday afternoon, or when we were handing out free food in the office, there was a period where people thought this was a kind of a gimmick and like you were using it to almost cover up for the fact that there was flaws in other areas of your business. And that was never the case. It's like, I think that the true test of a business is how you operate when it really matters. So during COVID is a good example. At Whisper, obviously everyone had to stay at home. So we immediately opened up access to counselors because we knew people were struggling with their mental health. And the business managed to find a chunk of money that was going to be set aside for people that were really struggling financially to make their bills meet that month. And they could access that money with no questions asked. And it didn't need to be repaid. And obviously we had in the UK, the government furlough scheme. So people were earning 80% of their salary. And for some people, they couldn't afford that at the bottom rung of our business. So our CEO removed himself from the books, and his entire salary went to support those at the bottom of the business to make sure they still took 100% of the salary. Mm-hmm. So what's really interesting is when we entered COVID, we had, I think, roughly 60 staff. At the end of lockdown, when the world started moving again, we had 150. And I honestly think we grew in that time when a lot of other similar companies either shrunk or died because of the way that we treated our people actually when it mattered. When I know for a fact that other rivals of ours were simply laying everyone off, taking as much money out of the bank as quickly as possible in case they lost the business and the directors wanted to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. We did something different. And I don't think people forget that. So actually how you treat your people in those times of challenge and turmoil is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a huge tipping point, right? That just demanded more humanity. And, it really separated out. And it's not just about the businesses that are willing to meet those needs, because that's driven by the leaders who are running those businesses, right? And there's, no way to fake caring in that way. You either do or you don't. You either care about your people in that way and believe that that type of humanity has a long-term benefit, or you don't, right? And I think that's kind of the shift we're talking about, and COVID certainly brought that to light. So Jake, through the conversations you've had with these remarkable guests, the goal is to uncover the secrets behind high performance and explore how we can all become the best version of ourselves. I'm curious if you would be willing to share something you personally have adopted or changed as a result of what you've learned over the course of doing this that has helped you become a better you.
Yeah, what a great question. I think the biggest thing for me, Sarah, was that for a long time, I thought unless I was absolutely killing myself at the kind of the altar of hard work, that I was never going to achieve my own version of high performance. It's kind of how I judged myself all the time. Has the week been a success? Have I given my everything? Have I given my all? Anytime that I was relaxing, I thought it was cool to make sure I was reading a self-help book or reading a management book or secretly making notes in my phone about the things that I could do to improve myself or my business. And as soon as we went on holiday, I was famous for saying to Harriet, my wife, after the first day, I'm ready to get home and crack on. And she used to laugh and be like, are you ready to say that thing? And I basically had to learn that, and this was cool. What changed it for me was I saw a graph, right? And funny things can impact you, can't they?
Mm-hmm.
So for years, people are saying, oh, it's important to make sure that, everything's in balance. And I was like, yeah. That's because you don't achieve the things I'm achieving. You're not on the path that I'm on. Then I saw this great graph, and it was a straight line, and it had a curve upwards on the top, and then a curve down, like a traditional
Mm-hmm.
bell curve, and then exactly the same underneath. And it said something like, the smartest people understand that the amount of effort that you put into your recovery and your wellness needs to equate to the amount that you put into your performance and your successes. And it's only then that I thought, oh, so I need to approach the recovery and the downtime and the calm elements of my life with the same focus as I approach all of what I consider to be the sort of high performing sides of my life, all the businesses and all the bits and pieces. Because I kind of think that a lot of people make this mistake of thinking they will fully invest in their work life. They'll fully invest in their relationships in the office. They'll fully invest in their business decisions. And then the other side of life, relationships with partners, relationships with kids, conversations with parents, time spent with friends, periods on holiday, doing things they're passionate about. As long as I get all the first stuff right, that other stuff will just all happen. It'll all just fall into place. And it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You end up sitting on the sofa at home, scrolling through your phone, doom scrolling nonsense, thinking, why do I feel a bit empty and a bit useless? I tell you what, I'll go and do more work, and then I'll feel some self-worth again. And you end up in this awful spiral of either working or loathing yourself a bit. And I think I definitely fell into that place. And it was seeing that graph made me think, hold on, so I need to approach the other side of life the same as I do the side of life that I think I'm nailing. So then it became about, right. And I don't think we should apologize, by the way, for taking the parts of our life that isn't work related or business based or whatever and optimizing them. I think it's important. I don't think we should be embarrassed about optimizing relationships with our partners or our kids or our parents. We should go for meals with our other halves and sit down and say, look, where am I failing at the moment? Like, where are things a struggle? Where can I do better? Am I supporting you well enough? It's okay to do that kind of stuff. You can't expect that side of your life is going to flow unless you give it the time and the attention that it needs. So more time spent with Harriet, more time spent with the kids, more time, not just spent with them, but actually thinking, what's the cool thing that we can do? Nurturing relationships with male friends, which I didn't do for a long time. And I think there's an issue there for a lot of men that they end up in a position where they feel successful but lonely, which is a bad place to be. From my experience, and you may think differently, but the women in my life are so much better at spending time with each other and relating to each other and talking about the things that are spinning them out. Whereas I was in a world of just bottling that up because nobody needed to know that stuff. So that was a really important learning lesson for me, and one that I think is important for people to understand, because the world is geared up to tell us that unless we're grafting really hard, then we're failing. And actually the same amount of effort needs to be put in. That balance is very, very important.
Yeah. Was
Have
that
you
hard
got it
for you
right?
at first?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, Sarah,
Okay.
awfully hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awfully hard.
I mean, I'm in the midst of it, Jake, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I'm 43, but I have learned so much about myself in the last couple of years, and I had a lot of childhood trauma. So I'm starting to realize like a lot of that drive
Mm.
is a symptom of that, right? And it's good to an extent, right? When you can temper it and you understand it, et cetera. I'm not great at rest, but I'm working on it and I'm getting better. And I think it is incredibly important. But I think when you're built a certain way, that is a really hard lesson to like truly take in and then action. Because to your point, it's so easy to default back to like, okay, well, no, but I really have to get to this. I need to make time for this. And what always suffers is, those other things that ultimately really, truly are more important than anything else.
True. And also there's so much comfort in being busy, right? Because like, the secret to being successful in business. I mean, you've done it, right? You've lived it. You've got the t-shirt, you're a great advert for how someone can make their mark in the world of business. Right. So therefore every time you feel a bit uneasy because you're sitting with your own thoughts, you can just be busy again because you know how to be successful when you're busy. So you go and be busy, you go and be successful, you feel good, and then you think, okay, I'm all right. But what you've not dealt with is the ability to sit silently and go, right, how do I feel about my life and
Mm-hmm.
myself? And the childhood trauma thing, and thanks for sharing that, is a very interesting topic for me, because I think that maybe 80% of the people that we've sat across from on high performance, once you start talking to them about what drives them to do the things they do, they end up talking about things that happened when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Normally challenging, difficult, heartbreaking, awful, hard things that happened when they were younger. And I do believe that childhood trauma lights a fire in people that those who haven't been through that trauma just can't relate to, or just
Mm-hmm.
don't feel right. But then it's also very important to realize that that also comes at a cost.
Yeah.
The fire being lit, but also your constant need to feed and keep that fire going, because that's where so much of your self-worth is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually just to stop for a period is the most difficult and challenging
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I think actually, and I hope this is the case for you, once you've stopped and taken stock and realized where you are, then I think you can go again. But you go again in the knowledge that achieving great things in business is not your everything anymore. It's
Right.
part of who you are. And this realization that I think you only get to around the age that you and I are, I'm a little older than you, I'm 47 this year. I thought for a long time, and again, some challenging things in my childhood I thought were really bad for me. It's only now that I realize I would not want to go through them again, and I wouldn't wish them on anyone else. But just because they were hard for me, it doesn't mean they were necessarily bad for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also an important thing for people to understand. That a lot of the things that you have done in your life, you may never have experienced, never achieved, never seen if it wasn't for some of the things you went through when you were younger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's same. I mean, I wouldn't change it. But I am on a quest to understand it all better and to, just like you said, work on that balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so important. Okay, Jake, last question is, so I am a huge believer in the power of curiosity, and I think what is often just a very underrated value of listening. So, in the interviews that you've conducted, the great conversations you have had the honor of having, what have you learned about the art of asking good questions and actively listening that leaders listening to this might benefit from considering?
Yes, Sarah, what a brilliant final question. I mean, it's the font of everything great, right? The ability to listen to other people, the ability to see a different point of view, the ability to empathize and see the world through someone else's eyes. I think that for a long time, what we thought leadership was, right, was having the answers. You were the boat at the front of the convoy, and all people had to do was follow you, and you would get them through those choppy waters. And it's not the way to lead, because all it leaves is the boats behind you having arrived where they needed to go, but no idea how they got there.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that develop other people? How does that create a business where everyone in that business is improving and getting better all the time? I see leadership much more as a lighthouse, right? Where you're there going, look, be careful of these risks and these dangers and find your way across. And I think that what we have to understand when it comes to that is that as leaders, you have to hold your beliefs lightly. I
Mm-hmm.
love that phrase, because for a long time, leaders were seen as the ones that held their views really tightly. And this is the direction of our business. This is the direction of the industry. These are the things that we're going to achieve, and this is how we're going to achieve them. And actually, the very best leaders are the ones that go, right, I don't actually know where this business is going to be in 5 years' time. I want to have my opinions challenged and changed by you. I want you to come to me with a different point of view. I want the ability to stop and listen. I think, Mark Moffat, who I'm good friends with, is an absolute master of having his opinion changed. And I would say be very wary of leaders, and not just leaders in business, leaders in the free world. Let's talk about politicians for a minute. Be very wary of politicians who have a super firm idea of how the world should be and are refusing to listen to anybody else's point of
Mm-hmm.
view, because the ability to have your mind changed actually is an indication of quite what a smart person you are,
Mm-hmm.
not someone who rigidly sticks to certain beliefs. And I think your idea of why this matters for everyone is, I remember interviewing Johnny Wilkinson, and if anyone's listening to this in the UK, they'll know him. He's the most famous rugby player ever to come from our country. He won the Rugby World Cup for England in 2003. I said to him at the end of our conversation, what's your secret to a high performance life? And he said, exploration. And I do wonder, like, what do we leave on the table when we're done? Like this idea of being brave enough to explore and push our boundaries and see what else is out there. And really, if high performance as a concept stands for anything, it stands for not leaving people on their deathbed with these ghosts of missed opportunities floating around saying, if only you'd have just been brave enough to explore this, if only you'd have had the ability to chase after that thing that you thought you weren't quite capable of achieving, and imagine what you could have done. Yeah. So I think keep exploring. It is the secret to so much success, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, Jake. Everyone, be sure to check out High Performance on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow Jake on LinkedIn for his very thoughtful, very motivational content. Really appreciate the time.
Sarah, thank you so much for such great questions. It's lovely to see you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'm joined now by two of my fellow judges for this year's awards, Jed Cranny, who retired earlier this year from his role as senior consultant with Konica Minolta's international service business, and Roy Dockery, who is the Senior Director of Field Services Research at TSIA, author and former service leader himself. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being here. Our fourth judge, Maureen Azato of WBR Research, wasn't able to join us today, but we greatly appreciate her contribution to the judging process. I have a couple of questions for you both, but before we get to those, let's give the people what they've all been waiting for. It's time to announce this year's Standout 50. On behalf of myself and all of our judges, a huge congratulations to this year's recipients who were nominated by teammates, colleagues, and industry peers and selected for how they stand out in their authenticity, innovative thinking, and stellar execution. So let's have ourselves a chat. Jed, I'm going to start with you. You were a Standout 50 recipient last year, and now on the other side, judging this year. What is one reflection you can share with everyone on looking at the awards from this new lens?
I think looking at it from this side of the table rather than the other side of the table is the passion of the people who did the nominations about the person and the authenticity they bring to the business, not just the strategy, but the way they're able to, like, as I said earlier, story tell to all levels. So, keep that up, but share, come back, share. Don't just, work in your silos of your own business. What's really nice is the problems we've all got in different service areas are in different service industries, but they're the same thing, just in a different colour. So share the ideas, join webinars. And we've got some real talent out there, so let's get that talent, sharing ideas and making service better for our customers and our future customers.
Yeah, the judging process was no easy feat. There were a lot of nominations. They were really a lot of fun to read through. We were speaking earlier about how much enthusiasm the folks that nominated people had. Which is really special, and probably, Jed, being a judge this year probably made your nomination last year even more special, seeing what people put into that and, the stiff competition.
Yeah, truly, leverage it. I didn't, and I think you've also got to celebrate. It's not actually the award of the person, it's the award of everybody, and it's a recognition of the things that the business is doing right and people seeing that in the business. You might be the figurehead, but it's all your people's award as well. So celebrate with your people.
Absolutely. Roy, as I stated in the introduction, we hope that a secondary benefit of Standout is that it will bring greater recognition to the role service plays within businesses. What would you hope that a C-suite executive would consider if they saw a leader within their organization being awarded this award this year?
Yeah, and I think you and I talked a little bit about this. You joined me on our State of Field Services for 2025 webinar that we did with TSIA. And I think the challenge with that is that a lot of times service leaders have great insight into where the organization needs to go, but we're not normally at the table. So one of the things I even said kind of for the entire industry is that we have to learn how to be navigators. And that comes with, and Jed talks about it a lot, being storytellers. So I think what the C-suite needs to understand, and the one thing that we saw in a lot of the nominations, most of this was internal impact, right? So these were people that were doing things to transform the business internally, to prepare it, to allow it to navigate in these new times. And sometimes as service leaders, we tend to only speak when we're being asked to respond. And we need to start helping the organization court the path. We need to start saying, hey, here's an obstacle to look out for. There's a catastrophe coming. But we tend to keep that to ourselves. We have like an internalized, catastrophized voice. That's all. We always know what's going to go bad. We always know what's gonna run us into a cliff. But we're so used to not being listened to that we just talk about it amongst our team, like within our service org. But we really have to kind of run into the war room and let people know that there's a problem coming, right? Because we see the competitive threats. We know what our competitors are doing. We know who our customers are buying from because our technicians tell us everything, right? So they're those hundreds and thousands of ears that we have out there are important. But so I hope the C-suite understands that if the rest of the industry is recognizing your leaders and recognizing them as thought leaders, then you need to recognize them as thought leaders. And even if they don't have a seat at the C-suite table, you need to give them a voice so that they can kind of help lead the organization when it comes to navigating uncertainty or supply chain issues or economic problems or geopolitical issues. We always know in field service before everybody does, right? So we can feel the vibration at the ground level.
Yeah.
And we should be able to, they just need to listen to their service leader. So I think that's what would come out of it. And if not, then if you don't want it, then start making C-suite roles for service leaders because they're the best navigators you have in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Jed, what is one trait or characteristic that stuck in your mind from this year's nominations?
I think it's the resilience. Service is so complex now, and you've got different types of customer, different types of employee, all different from 1960s my type people right through to people are born in 2000s now. They're not just employees, they're customers. They've all got different ways of interacting, they've all got different ways of working, they've got different demands, they've got different things they'll put up with. And what really came through was that passion, resilience, where the strategies are put in place. And as Roy says, service sees these changes, and we do what service do. We fix things before even C-suite until the bandwidth that we've got with the budgets we've got and such like are really pushing the edges, and that's when we go. And what's really nice is some of these leaders are getting to the C-suite really quickly. They're starting to talk to people, and they're getting the story, and they're bringing the story back through the business, through the middle management, driving the middle management, but also getting to the people. And you know me, I like storytelling, so get to the people who actually do the work and get to the customers and talk the story about what the business is. And that came from me, and it's the resilience of the people to be able to do that.
Roy, what about you?
I would say, and Sarah, I've been on the podcast several times. My favorite topic is authenticity, right? It's even when you talk about the storytelling, when you look at a lot of the internal transformation, new platform rollouts that people were being nominated for, we asked a specific question about authenticity. So we had authenticity, innovation, and execution. But the thing is that we all know from being in different leadership roles and seeing different leaders, you don't get successful execution unless people trust the leader, and you don't get trust as a leader unless you're authentic, or at least people think you're authentic, right? You can be or you're either very good at pretending to be, but it's the authenticity, because you can tell people we're inspired and motivated by that leader. So like Jed said, whatever the direction was, even if it didn't come from them, if it wasn't their idea, if it was a company-wide rollout, they had their team's commitment. So the team felt inspired, right? Because all of this is change, and we know that most people don't like change. So even that fact that people are being nominated for the way that they took their team through changes. I don't think I read any nomination that wasn't about some kind of change within an organization. So I think that authenticity from that leader allows them to have the trust of the people that when they say go, people follow them, right? And then it allows them to have effective execution because somebody else tried that same program, somebody else tried that same AI platform, that same that field service management platform transition, and it didn't go well because people didn't trust the leader. And then you don't get that buy-in and that followership that allows you to have good execution results. So I think authenticity always to me stands out. And even for me, I weigh that a little bit more even than innovation, right, when I was looking at them. But there were a lot of people who specifically spoke about the authenticity, the impact of that leader, the strength of that leader, how they communicate. And, and it always comes back to authenticity makes people feel seen. And I think a lot of people talked about how those leaders made them feel. And I think that comes from authenticity.
Yeah, I had an opportunity earlier today to sit down with Mike Gosling from Cubic Transportation Systems, who is one of the Standout 50 for this year. And we had a whole discussion about their digital transformation. But when we spoke about change management, Mike was very clear about trust and respect and how crucial those are in a two-way format, right, with his team and really across the business. The other thing that he said that I really appreciated is he said, as a leader, when something goes wrong, it is my responsibility to take full accountability for whatever that is. When something goes right, it's my responsibility to acknowledge whomever on my team or, the folks on the team that contributed to that. And I think that's, a really great mentality and very representative of what you're saying. There's this whole element of relationship building with the people that you work with and your teams that's just so crucial and has, it depends so much on that trust and that respect. Jed, coming back to you, what is one thing you would like to say to this year's winners?
After congratulations, I think, get involved, get out of your silos, share. There's a great community within the Future Field Service. Become part of it, share your thinking, learn from the thinking, because there's some really clever people in there. Mike, you've just said Mike, he's one of people I have massive respect for. And there's an answer there for every problem. It's getting out there, it's sharing yours, getting the trust, people sharing their ideas back. Building that community, it's not sales where we're in competition with other people. It's about learning, building. The world is changing at a faster and faster rate. We can't go to college and learn everything. We've got to learn on the hoof. And if we learn from each other, we can learn faster. And we can gain trust from people like Mike. I met Mike again this morning and we had a quick chat, and straight away he offered ideas of something that, and I'm retired now, but it was great just to have that conversation with him. So, be open. Don't hide away. Don't just put the trophy in the cupboard. Go out and share what you've done. You're very, very great people, and you really deserve these awards.
Yeah. Good. Roy?
I would say the thing I would start with, congratulations, right? Someone cared enough to take the time to write it and to invest in that activity. And then I would say that for leaders, develop the next generation, right? And when I say generation, I don't even mean age. Most of the people I've developed over the course of my career were actually older than me, right? So when I say it's just the next generation of people that'll come into the organization to lead, right? So that next wave, I think a lot of us sometimes are afraid to develop because there's a limitation, right? There's one manager, there's 20 technicians, there's 3 directors, there's 1 vice president. And so one thing I would say is that if we want the industry to have healthy leaders, we need to be willing to develop, even if it's a sacrifice. So, and I would tell people all the time, I expect you to develop your employees, even if we need to develop them out. So if they need to be a great leader somewhere else because we don't have an opening, but we need great leaders across the industry. We need people to be in management, supervisor positions, director and VP roles, C-suite roles. So just to develop, right, and always look for an opportunity to create like a space, right, or just to create an opportunity for the next person to step into that field. But find somebody to mentor at work, find somebody to mentor outside of work, and find somewhere outside of work also to serve as a leader. Because there's a lot of organizations in communities, right? A lot of these leaders, I know a lot of them personally. I know some of their passion projects, right? Whether it's hiking or community service. Also find somewhere to lead in the community, because the community could also benefit from your leadership skills and that type of behavior as well. So yeah, lead well, and then train others how to lead, so that we're keeping this kind of passion, this kind of authenticity, this kind of inspiration, that we're replicating it and we're not just holding it. So go clone yourself as many times as possible, because we need better leaders across all organizations.
Yeah. That's a great point. I love the point about taking that leadership out into the community. I think, it's also important for these folks, and I think, I don't know all 50 of these individuals, but I think I do know many of them, and it's important to continue developing yourself as well, right? And not feel like you've gotten to a point like, well, I've achieved this level, I've won this award, I can sort of kick my feet up, right? And I don't think these folks are doing that, and that's wonderful. The more you work on yourself, the more you can help bring up that next era of leaders. The other point you made, Jed, about the power of community, the folks within this year's recipients that I do know are big believers in that. They're very open to sharing their time, their knowledge of themselves. They're interested in being of service, not only to their teams or their companies, but to the industry and beyond. And there's a lot of power in tapping into that. So really good stuff. Thank you both for taking part in Standout this year and playing such a big role in the judging process, and to Maureen as well.
Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
Let's once again give a huge congratulations to our 2025 recipients. In our interview, Jake and I spoke about the incredible late Dame Stephanie Shirley. In her book, she says of leadership, "The older I get, the clearer it becomes to me that empowerment is the key to business success. It is people, not assets, that make the modern business world go round. It is their creative drive that sparks new enterprise and innovation, their professionalism and dedication that ensures quality, their energy that makes things happen, and always it is teamwork that carries forward the vision. Yes, by all means, lead from the front if that is your style, but always remember that leadership is nothing unless those who are led give the best of themselves. Like love, leadership is at its best about giving, not taking." Kudos to each of our Standout 50 of 2025 for embodying impactful leadership and giving of yourselves. We are proud and honored to recognize each of you. If you don't already, be sure to follow Future of Field Service on LinkedIn. We have some exciting content planned with our Standout 50 leaders for this year, as well as a lot of community engagement to help connect those individuals with one another and with you all. So stay tuned for more to come in the coming weeks and months. This is just the beginning. Thanks so much for joining us today. Be well.